lounging, son.
Welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and with me today, I have a really dope indie cartoonist with me. I have Jason Beirens, and this is kind of the return of the Indie Creator Spotlight. I haven't really done one in a while, so I'm really stoked to have you on. It's a perfect time. You have a Kickstarter going. You've had a bunch of dope books that, I've been following you on Facebook for a while, so I'm really stoked to finally have you on, talk some comics, talk what inspires you, all that good stuff, man.
Oh, I really appreciate you having me on here. I've been really digging the show. So
Yeah, man, thank you. Yeah, I've wanted, I think I might have asked you a very long time ago with one of your other Kickstarters. I can't remember because I ask a lot of people, but I'm stoked that you're finally on. I know we've been trying to get this going for a couple of weeks. So I always like to ask everybody, I'm sure you probably already know this if you've been watching. I like to ask kind of like what's your origin story in terms of like how you got into comics and then in turn how that turned into you wanting to make your own.
when I was a little kid, I loved like comic strips, Garfield and Hagar the Horrible and Broomhilda, all of those. And then my brother, who is 11 years older than me, went to into the army, came back from Germany, and he had like four short boxes full of like X-Men and Captain America, Avengers, and he's just kind of like here.
Mhm.
So that's kind of what started me from comic strips to comic books, and it was like that really golden age of Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, all the Image guys just before Image.
Right on.
Yeah,
That's crazy. My brother and I have 11 and a half years between us. I don't often hear that with people because that's such a huge gap. Um,
it
so
is. Yeah.
so what were like, did you like who were some of the creators that you kind of gravitated towards? Like when did you start like kind of paying attention to that and then in turn like kind of drawing influence from them?
Like right away, as I said, it was like that really X-Men with Jim Lee and New Mutants with Rob Liefeld and Wolverine with Mark Silvestri and uh, Todd McFarlane on Spider-Man and all of that. Yeah, and then like 2 years later, Image kind of started up. So it was like all of those, the core creators, the founders of Image that kind of really got me into it. And then I started finding the Alan Moore run on Swamp Thing with Steve Bissette and John Tuttleben, and that led me to Sandman uh, with all of those great artists. And I read that way out of order. I think I read The Wake, which is like the second to last book first. And I just kind of went all over the place with that just because I followed the artist, not the story. And Michael Zulli was awesome. So
I get it. Yeah. I think like obviously most of us when we're younger, we're probably following the artist first, because like it is like a very visual medium,
yeah,
I quickly, I think very young at a young age is when I started like following the writers, but that's kind of what I was like wondering because you definitely draw like monsters really good. So like hearing you say Swamp Thing kind of makes sense
yeah.
to me.
Monsters are just they're fun, organic, strange shapes. So yeah.
So when did you decide you wanted to make your own comics? And are you self-taught? Did you go to art school?
I went to the Art Institute of Seattle for animation, and then I got an associate's in that, and then I went to Washington State University and got a fine arts degree. But I've kind of always wanted to make my own comics. I just love the black and white, the line. But I've only really over the last 5 or 6 years really started to work on it. So, and that's like uh, I think the Kickstarter you were talking about earlier was Gray Hat, which got that done.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one this is the first book, Deep Forest, and I've got the second issue at the printer, and then the third issue's done, and that's everybody kind of. I talked to all of our kayfabe community, and they all kind of said, just put the trade out. Don't even bother with the third issue. So, although I do love floppy copy comics. So
Yeah. Well, no, yeah. I dig your work. I think Deep Forest. I think I think I have. I'm pretty sure I have that one. I mean, I read a lot of comics, so sometimes it's like stuff gets
Right,
lost in the shuffle. But I know I have Gray Hat, and Gray Hat probably was the one I reached out to you about doing
right.
that Kickstarter. Um,
Yeah,
so what was the first comic book that you published? Because you self publish all your stuff.
right. The first one was the individual issues of Gray Hat.
Okay.
So there are five.
And so what was the initial choice to like go with Kickstarter instead of, I mean, I don't know what year you did that in, but I know like nowadays, like sometimes people kind of forego the Kickstarter route and they just go through like Comics Wellspring or, all there's so many different print on demand stuff. So what was the
Right.
choice to go through Kickstarter?
Just to build an audience, really,
Hmm.
which I slowly but surely I'm building one, which is nice. So like I see return names on every consecutive Kickstarter, which is like, oh, that's awesome. And then we become friends on Facebook and Instagram and everything. So
How important is the kayfabe community? Because you mentioned them, right? Like, how important
right,
has that kind of been to like getting your stuff out there? Because I know, like, just from the many people that I've talked to, I mean, I've developed a lot of friendships through the group as well. Like in talking and seeing everybody's projects. I mean, there's some people that are like in the Diamond catalog that are also promoting their indie stuff in the group.
right,
So, like, how
yeah.
important has that been for you and growing your audience?
I it's helped considerably. I mean, so many come from there, and it really started with only like the maybe last issue of Gray Hat, where I kind of became part of it.
Mhm.
Um, but from there, like when I did the trade, that it really helped to have so many other creators and readers like be familiar with me and my work and just kind of online, and that kind of got them interested in looking. So
Yeah, it's cool to watch the community grow because I think I got into the community. Oh man, it must have been because I met Eli because he shops at the shop I work at. So I remember when he was putting together Wizard One, and I've told this story many times, but he was putting together Wizard One, asked me if I wanted to help edit because he knew that I had a website at the time. I wasn't doing YouTube yet, and then he kind of introduced me to all this stuff, and I'm like, what? Like I'd heard of Cartoonist Kayfabe, but I didn't really know about it that well. And he told me like, oh yeah, they started going through Wizard magazine. And I grew up reading Wizard magazine, so I was like, okay,
yeah,
I'll check it
same.
out. And the pandemic hit, we were on lockdown, and I went through to the beginning of Cartoonist Kayfabe, and I watched every episode. I caught up to wherever it was at, and then I just started like becoming fans of everybody in the group. And then he had added me to the group, but I've never really done Facebook groups. Like
Right.
I'll click add or something if it's something that I'm into, but I don't really like engage. This is the first group that I've ever like really engaged with, and the positivity to come out of it and the creativity to come out of it, even for me that's not making comics, it's just super inspiring, to see so much
it,
positivity in
it
such a
is. Yeah,
negative space of social media, you know what I mean?
there's no trolls really,
If
which
there
is
are, they get kicked out.
yeah. So everybody's just like, we love this medium and we're here to share the love, and it's great. So with cartoon the group, I found much later than the actual show, the kayfabe show. I was one of probably the first 200 people to subscribe.
Oh,
I've
well,
been with it a long time, but then I first it like was suggested to me on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, okay, join, see what's going on. So I lurked for a long time, but then I started to interact. So
yeah,
yeah,
I remember for me, I was like, fuck, should I be posting my links to my stuff? And I think I messaged Eli. I'm like, is this all right? Like, I feel like I'm just promoting myself. Because at first I wasn't, I'd interact, I'd throw a couple comments, and he's like, dude, put yourself up there. Like, you don't need to ask. Like, you're fine. And like that's when it like kind of dawned on me that like, oh, something I can do with my channel is interview people like like because I do have like some really like established names, like I've had Todd McFarlane on, but then I get some, maybe somebody sees that, but then they start going through my catalog of episodes, and then they discover stuff. I've had people in my shop come up to me and were like, oh man, I saw this book, I picked it up. So like from an indie guy, and like that is a huge goal of mine, is to kind of spread the word of comics, not just for Marvel, DC, Image, Boom, Dark Horse, all that stuff, but for people like and like kind of prop you guys up and bring eyes to your stuff, because I really dig it, and I know that if more people see it, they're gonna dig it too.
Yeah,
So
word of mouth is huge for anybody,
yeah,
but especially the indie creators, because everybody has heard of and loves Mark Waid or Todd McFarlane, but then and you're just helping prop them up, but then that also helps prop up people like me, as you said. It's kind of like, oh, I'm on there too, and they're see my name on the scroll through. So yeah,
yeah, because look, I get it. I know marketing and promoting yourself as like an artist or what, it's hard. Like my wife is an artist. I know she doesn't really like to do that kind of stuff. It's hard for her to do. So
right.
like I love to help get the word out as much as I can. Like I get that, like I only have so much time, and sometimes coordinating with people is hard, but like I always try to make it work. I always try to find time, especially for you guys. And I wanted to ask you, like I kind of mentioned for myself how it was inspirational for me. How much does it motivate you watching the other cartoonists in the group and kind of what they're doing with their work?
Oh, it's incredibly inspiring. It's just watching everybody kind of grow, like Jeff Manley with his Riley the Teenage Bigfoot. I've been friends with him on Facebook for probably 10 years, and I remember I did a pinup for his one of his first books, Gone, and just to see him become so good, or watching Eli's stuff kind of grow with his Cosmic Lion, and yeah, it's really fun. I've never really had a comic book friend group like in real life,
Yeah.
so it's nice to have the online community. I can just like be myself and be like, oh, you love this, I love this, this is great, and just kind of introduce each other to other indie artists or other books we haven't maybe read or whatever. So
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely, dude. So let's talk about your current book that you're doing, which is a collection of multiple projects, right?
it's three kind of one shots. It was kind of playing off the idea of those micro series that they used to do with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
Yeah.
but it's really just kind of one bigger story. It's going to be 100-page book, maybe a little bit more, because the book is actually done, but I just keep kind of drawing pictures for it anyway. So, and the story's kind of basically a robot barbarian fighting monsters in a part of the city that's kind of gotten infected. So the book is called Incursion of the Ghastly Creatures, which are it's just a fun series of words to say, really.
Yeah.
Uh, but then the individual issues, like we discussed, Deep Forest. The next issue is Wonderful Grotesque, and the third issue would have been Tyrant Goliath. Again, just kind of fun phrases that kind of inform the story, but it's mostly, as I said, the robot that's powered by a human soul, and he's fighting kind of Lovecraftian monsters and trying to find a way to close the incursion. But yeah, so here's like
Yeah,
one
let
of
me see
the
that. Oh,
pictures.
that's dope.
I'm what I'm doing right now is I have 21 days left, and I want to do like at least one new illustration per day, and it might end up in the book, might not. They take about, well, like any given page, my time frame a lot of the time is an episode of Ancient Aliens, or so it's like about 45 minutes, give
Dang,
or
you knock
take.
one of those out in
So
45 minutes?
usually less, yeah.
That's crazy, dude. I mean, like I'm also amazed. Like my wife too, she'll go into the because I'm in the art room. This is where I record from. Like she'll go in and she'll start something, and then I'll come back a couple hours later, and it's like a full painting is done. And it's like it just
Right.
amazes me how fast you know artists can just like knock something out. Like I can't even draw a fucking stick figure that I would be satisfied with, you know.
Right.
And you're watching Ancient Aliens, and so you're watching something, and you're just drawing something, and you're
Yeah.
knocking it out.
Yeah, it's my meditation basically. So it's how I get to relax because my it's not a day job, it's a graveyard shift job, but I work based in a warehouse for a biotech company, so I'm helping make medications, so it's a lot of like go 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 go, and then I come home and I just sit and draw. So for like an hour or so, and then so it's just my way to calm down, clear my head, and just relax. So
Yeah, it's like, and it's also like therapy. It's kind of unwinding
yeah,
with the pencil and stuff. So, are you all traditional then? Like, you don't
yeah,
use any? Did
I do cleanup in Photoshop, and
okay,
like with Gray Hat, I colored it in Photoshop, and like the covers I do, but yeah, it's pen and ink, mostly just ink. The pencil is very lightly used. I don't think anybody could actually ink my pencils. So
so let's talk so a little bit more about the Kickstarter. Like, what are the different tiers that people can get? Yeah, what are the different tiers? Any stretch goals planned or anything like
uh,
that?
the different tiers are the book itself in PDF form or in actual form, which is always the best.
Right.
And um, there's commission, so you can just say, "Hey, I want this character drawn," and I'll probably do an illustration to like,
Yeah, that's the tier I got.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll basically be a full illustration that'll look a lot like any of the pages. Like did a Conan piece for fun the other day, and that's right there. So and that
That's
again,
awesome, dude.
45 minutes maybe.
How does your hand move that fast? That's crazy, dude. That's a lot of because that's something that I really dig about your stuff too, is the rendering, like the detail that you put in your stuff is just awesome.
Yeah, and that's Mobius.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I love the little lines. I love all the McFarlane calls it noodling, right?
Noodling. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's I love the little details. I love just making shapes. So yeah.
And then I saw I think you were doing it in one of the chats that I'm in with for Next Mile Press. You were thinking about throwing up some sketch covers.
Yeah, I have like a pile of really random ones. Like I have a Thor. I also have a Mickey Mouse and a Bob's Burgers and a few others. And I figure they're just sitting there, so I could throw that in. I'm probably going to throw that tier in probably later today.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, anything like
Yeah,
little extra that you can do is always good. Like that's what I kind of look for because
yeah,
sometimes like depending on like the financial situation, right? Like I'll just if I'm supporting it, I'll never just do the PDF because I can't like I need a physical
yeah,
copy, but I'll always
yeah,
get like the physical, But like
yeah,
sometimes like you see those extra tiers, like oh that sounds dope, or you have a little extra and you can throw it in. Like that's why I made sure to like get that commission share when I saw that was there. What's next after the Kickstarter? Like what are your plans afterwards?
I'm working on a book for Next Panel Press. I am working on page 6 or 7 now, which is set in the same world as Gray Hat and Ghastly Creatures. It's just I'm just different times, so they'll all share uh, characters or places.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's called Sore Thumb. So it's a guy from another world dropped into the bird stacking world is the name of the city.
Mm-hmm.
There's also going to be a ghost who inhabits a robot, and then a Viking with um, probably a name that might ruffle some feathers, but his name's gonna be Bjorn again Christensen. So
I like that. That's awesome.
yeah, I love terrible puns. It's like uh, Brandon Graham stuff, all about bad puns. It's great.
I love Brandon Graham. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah,
So, is that something? Well, first of all, is that something that you think you're going to collect eventually after you get so many chapters? And then, second part, for anybody listening and watching that is not familiar with Next Panel Press, could you kind of, hip them to that?
yeah, it's a collection of creators from the kayfabe community, basically that Craig CK and Rick Lopez, I think, put together.
Mhm.
And they invited me in a couple weeks ago, and I've just been kind of rolling with it. It's a bunch of really fun, nice people that are just really creative forces.
And then, are you gonna, like I said, are you gonna collect Sore Thumb after you have so many issues together?
Yeah, I think I probably like to, if I once I get like 24 pages up, and then I'll put a book out, a a, a, a floppy copy, and then whenever I whenever it's done, I'm still not sure how long it's going to be. I know the ending, but it
Mhm.
could be hundreds of pages. I don't know. But then I'd love to collect it and add it, put a spine on it, which is always the goal, right? So
Yeah. So in
yeah,
terms of like, getting your work out there, I know you do Kickstarter, but is there any other avenues? Like, have you gotten into shops? Have you called any shops trying to get the book in there? Or have you thought about maybe instead of doing like a Kickstarter, right? Like, I don't know if you have a website, but if you did like a pre-order thing and kind of could
right.
gauge it that way so that you could just do print on demand and not deal with the headache that I know Kickstarter can be as a creator.
Yeah, and it certainly can be, but it's a great platform, really. And
Mm-hmm.
as I said, I've used it to build an audience. So it, I might try, like with the first collected issue of Sword Thumb, I might try to just do a pre-order. But then I've got another couple of stories I'm working on as well. So maybe I'll try those first because
Mm-hmm.
I'm also 7, 8 pages into more of a noir story that I'm working on.
Oh,
So
nice. I love that genre.
yeah, it's great. My kid's name is Dashiell after Dashiell Hammett. So there you go. How much I love the noir genre. So
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know about Dashiell Hammett until Scalped when I was reading the intro that Jason Aaron did to why he named him Dashiell Bad Horse, and then he named his kid. He named his kid Dashiell too.
nice. I
Yeah,
didn't know that. So
yeah,
that's great.
yeah. Because that book's like I don't know if you've read Scalped, but Scalped is like one of my favorite
It's yeah.
books I've ever read.
I need to finish it. I read the first I think 2 trades, but yeah, it's really well done. But anything Jason Aaron does is really well done in my as far as I've seen. So
Yeah, I mean, I've read that series from beginning to end 3 times. That's how much I love that book. So you should definitely, if you can scoop it up, it's definitely worth
yeah,
reading. So in terms of like the Kickstarter is going to be done, you're working on next panel press. What's next on the plate? Like, are you going to do the noir book, or are you
yeah,
going to just continue to do Sword Thumb for a while? I know that like obviously fulfilling orders from Kickstarter, you're doing it by yourself, so that's a lot of work in and of
right,
itself. But
yeah.
what's like the output on a daily basis for you too?
To if I could just sit and draw, I probably probably could do like a page in an hour and probably have a full book done in like a week
Wow.
usually, as it once I start it just kind of it flows. So
And do
it's, as
you
I said, meditation. It's just how my brain works.
Yeah.
So
And do you what's the steps? Do you write or do you draw and then like do you have like the plot in your head? Like how does that
uh,
process go?
the plot is in my head. Um, with Gray Hat, it was almost literally like panel to panel. It's like I have the end point that I want to get to that I did actually get to. But it's, as I said, panel to panel. I would just kind of stream of consciousness, and then it's like I have the story beats. It's like, okay, I want to get to this point, I want to get to that point, but how it gets there would change, and even characters would change as I was going. So it was very unstructured.
Uh-huh.
With this book, the Incursion of the Ghastly Creatures, again, it was kind of the same way, but it was more page to page. And it's like, oh, I want to have a werewolf. Okay, I'm gonna have a werewolf. Okay, now I want a vampire. Oh, this vampire is gonna be his friend. Okay, and now I want to have. So it's just kind of ideas, just kind of meshing together. With Sore Thumb, I'm actually doing a full script for myself, which I've never
Mhm.
really done. And honestly, it's some of my best work, which is nice. So I probably should do full scripts for myself and plan the whole thing out and be like, okay, I want this imagery and blah, blah, blah. Do the Alan Moore thing, right? And just
Yeah.
do, yeah, like a full page for a single panel kind of
Dude,
description.
his scripts look like the work of a madman, like a
Yeah,
serial killer almost.
they kind of
On that
do.
old typewriter, like I
Yeah.
think Don Simpson sent me the one for In Pictopia, the
Oh,
script, and the way it looked like a serial killer was like writing up like their manifesto or something.
he was cutting up individual letters from magazines,
Yeah. Yeah.
pasting it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, all right, yeah, like I said, like I'm super stoked to get this new book, dude. I love all the stuff that you've been putting out. Huge fan of your work. What like before I kind of like wrap things up, what have you been reading lately that you've been digging that you kind of want to give a shout out to or recommend to anybody listening and watching?
Um, I've been reading weird team books, I guess, of late, like the Steve Orlando written Justice League of America that has like Batman and Atom and Lobo and a bunch of like villains and heroes. And uh, I'm started to read Savage Avengers, but my shop is uh, horrible at getting things in. So I just ordered the full first trade. But again, it's just a weird team up book, which I didn't realize until I was talking to our mutual friend Manny that that's kind of what I really like is all
Mm-hmm.
these strange characters coming together and looking at my work. That's kind of what happens. So it's like a motley crew of weird disparate characters kind of go from A to B. So
Cool. Yeah, I
uh,
really the new Savage Avengers has been really good. It just ended. It was only a 10
yeah,
issue run, which I'm kind of upset about because I was like Manny turned me onto that too. Like I wasn't reading the book.
right.
And then I picked up the first volume and then he was talking about issue 10 and he's like, "Oh, it's over." I'm like, like I just
Right.
started reading it and now it's done. But it is a really good book. I think you're really gonna dig it.
Yeah.
Um, all right, cool. Well, for everybody listening and watching, can you tell them where they can find you on all the social media stuff? I'm gonna drop the link down, all the links down below, and I'm gonna drop the link down to the Kickstarter, and then just give us one last word on the Kickstarter too.
It's got about 20 days left. It's at just almost 1,400 out of 2,000 that I'm going for. Hoping to get more because I'd love to do maybe like a sketchbook to go along with it, or as I said, any number of things like the sketch covers, etc. But I'd love to just kind of do more.
Mm-hmm.
Is always kind of the goal. Where to find me, the best place is probably Instagram. That's the more art orientated social media, and it's Instagram.com/birdstacking. Aside from that, that's I'm there, or I'm on Facebook, so under
All
my
right.
name. So
All right, cool, man. Well, again, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me this morning. I had a blast talking comics. Everybody, get out there, follow Jason on social media, and also click the link down below for that Kickstarter. Make sure you back it. Like you said, about 20 days left as of the day this is posting. And Jason, dude, we'll definitely do this again sometime in the future.
awesome. Thank you. It was fun.
Yeah.